Hey everyone, well I got a lot of requests to do a recap of my recent cruise, which if you're not familiar, I will link that video below. We went on a 10-day Panama Canal cruise. And I often do recaps for my cruises, but I actually hadn't planned on it with this one for some reason until I got a lot of you saying you would like to see one or you were looking forward to it. So if you're not familiar with these type of videos, basically I just recap the cruise and the cruise ship, some of the ports we went on. It's just very, vlog style, casual, in no particular order, just kind of how I think of things. So we did go on the Coral Princess, and that is one of two ships that Princess actually made specifically to go through the canal. So if you guys saw that vlog footage, I tried to get as much of the canal as I actually could because I just thought that was the really interesting part. And the reason for the cruise. Sure, there were other great stops, but the main reason was for the canal. So as you could see from that video footage, it is very narrow. So not a lot of ships can pass through. There are a lot of cargo ships that you see out waiting and going through, but I think there was only us and one other ship during that time. And then there's actually another set of locks. So if you go the full transit, meaning you start like in Florida and end up in California or vice versa, there is another set of locks that you go through. We just did the partial transit, which means, and I showed a little bit of this in that footage, which means you go through the canal and then you're in a lake. It's Gatun Lake, and you sit there. I would say it was probably a couple hours before we started making our transit then back through the canal. So we actually decided to stay on the ship, and I'll get into that in a minute. There's a couple of different options you can do. We decided to stay on the ship because I had done some research, and everybody's going to kind of have their own opinion about this, but we decided to stay on the ship because a lot of the excursions, if you got off, basically what you do when you go through the locks and you're sitting there in Gatun Lake, we anchor, and then our tenders, there will be a couple of them, will take you off. I think it was called the Gatun Yacht Club. You'll get off there and then go on your mini excursions. There's many to choose from. However, they all last a long time. So there were some of them that last anywhere from like 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours. And while you got to see a whole lot, I'm just not sure I'd really want to be out on an excursion that long. My husband and I have done that one other time, and we're like, I don't know if we'll ever do that again, because a short trip ended up being a lot longer. And I had read the same thing about these, that you really don't know, as far as like depending on going through locks and different things you're doing on your little smaller excursions. It could be like an extra hour or two added to what the time says on your excursion. So just something to think about. You're out, all day. And those that took shorter excursions, this was another thing. It's kind of strange, but if you took a shorter excursion, they dropped you back off in Colón, Panama, which is where the ship would meet passengers back. So again, if you saw that footage when we came back through the locks the second time, so several hours had passed, we were meeting people back about 5 o'clock, 5:30 or so. So say if you got off the ship once we went through the locks the first time, that's like half a day or more. It would have been 4 or 5 plus hours. So I know I'm probably confusing you guys. It's almost one of those you have to be on the ship to understand it. I didn't fully understand it, even though I had researched. So say if you only did an excursion that was like 3 hours long, well then you would sit and wait at some of the shops and restaurants where they were very minimal, by the way. That's why I didn't even shoot any footage of Colón. When we got off the ship, there's not a lot to do, and we were only there for like 2 hours. You get back on. You're only there basically waiting for those other passengers that took shore excursions that day. So there were some people waiting in restaurants a long time for the ship to come back and pick them up. So basically there's nothing for you to do. So just something to keep in mind if you want to do an excursion. I've heard they're wonderful though. You do get to see a lot more. However, we just really enjoyed staying on the ship. You could probably hear in some of that footage, we actually had like an onboard specialist. I don't think he's there all the time, but I know he had been there the 10 days prior and then was on our cruise. He talks about like the different ports we go to, and then he also knows a lot about the canal. So he was actually at the front of the ship talking, letting us know everything that was going on as we were going through the canal. So that was kind of cool to listen to. And again, you may hear bits and pieces of that if you watched that vlog footage. So this cruise was actually something my husband and I had talked about probably the last year or so. It's one of those you always kind of put it off because it is 10-day. I believe it's a 10-day minimum, and there's not very many ships that go. We talked about doing the full transit, but that's like a minimum, I think, of 14 days. And we just really didn't have the vacation time to do that. And even with the 10-day, you're already at 4 days at sea. 2 in a row at the beginning, and then 2 every other day, like, at the end. So you already have 4 days at sea, and you just have that many more days at sea if you do a 14-day. So it kind of had to do a lot with scheduling and all that. And it's definitely not the cheapest cruise ever. Of course, if you break it down per night, it sounds a lot better, but when you first sometimes see that dollar amount, it's always a little bit shocking. But like I said, it was 10 days. So I highly recommend going. We really loved it. Of course, going through the actual canal was the highlight. It was very cool seeing that up close. So I actually brought my itinerary here with me so I wouldn't forget the other ports of call that we went to. And again, I listed those in that vlog footage. Hopefully most of you have seen that are watching this video. But we had 2 days at sea, and then we went to Aruba. And we were only in Aruba for a few hours. I think we left by like 12:30 that afternoon. You typically get there about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we left. We knew we weren't going to take an excursion there. There's not a whole lot to do, though. We already knew that going into it. But it is one of those places that does have some shopping, and you can walk around. So we just kind of wanted to get a feel of everything and just walk around on our own. So there wasn't really much to report. You pretty much saw it, what I showed in the vlog. There's not a lot to do there. It's pretty around the marina area, but other than that, it was just okay. If I never went back, it'd be fine with me. Then we went to Cartagena, Colombia, which was really pretty, and we'd heard a lot of great things about that. I know a lot of people might be nervous about going to Colombia. Where we went with the cruise ship, we felt very safe walking around. We did take a tour, so that was cool. It was like an old and new city kind of tour, and a lot of cities in the Caribbean usually have those. I know Puerto Rico has one that was really good. We went on before. Again, we don't always take excursions, but in Colombia, it looked like there wasn't going to be a lot to do, or if you walked around on your own, it was a little bit hard to navigate from the ship. You had to make sure you get a taxi, and only a certain kind of taxi. And, we had went to these talks, learning more about each port, and it just kind of sounded like it might be a pain. So we're like, you know what, let's see if we can book an excursion. And most of the time you can book one. That's when we booked on the ship, by the way, not ahead of time. Most of the time, unless something's just super popular, they will still have excursions open, so you can go book it on the ship. So that's what we did with Colombia, and it was really pretty. Again, you guys saw that footage. We saw a lot of cool, neat things there. And then, of course, you do Panama Canal, and then you have Cologne, Panama. Again, Cologne is just something that where the ship's coming back to meet passengers. You can get off. There's a little bit of shopping, a couple of restaurants, but really there's not much to see there. It's very industrial port on the other side. It's very pretty. Just wasn't anything really to do there. Next, we were in Costa Rica. We were both really looking forward to doing this. There were several really good excursions, by the way. We took like the rainforest and the banana plantation. We went on this little boat ride you probably saw, just looking for monkeys and, all the natural habitat, wildlife there. So that was kind of cool. It literally poured down rain on us in the rainforest. How funny is that? It had been raining for several days, he said. It was one of those, they'll have dry periods and then wet. They might get a little bit of rain each day. So luckily we both wore our rain jackets, because when we pulled in port that morning, it was already sprinkling. It was warm, so we could wear shorts, but luckily we remembered to take our rain jackets on this trip, because we thought, we're going to the rainforest. We might actually need them, and we did. It was one of those walking through. We didn't even actually get to see that much of it, because not only did it start sprinkling, it literally started pouring rain. So we ended up just walking real, fast through everything. But that was interesting to see. We liked it. Got to take pictures of the banana plantation. You might have seen that a little bit. They are a huge exporter of bananas there. And what's so funny, ever since we've come home, we've looked at our bananas at the grocery store to see what the little Chiquita or Dole sticker or whatever, because they have both there, plus I think maybe another one. And we've never had any from Costa Rica except for this very last time. So that was kind of cool. We know now exactly where they came from. We didn't get to go through the whole tour of the plantation because we actually got a notice right before on the ship that they had the plantation closed. I think some of it got like infected maybe with something. So part of it, they were trying to kill off the plants so it wouldn't spread. So we got to see some of the live plants, but we couldn't get out. But we got to hear, you know, why they do certain things and all that. So that was neat. I really didn't feel like I missed out on anything by not going in the actual factory and touring it, because we got to hear everything about it and still see it. That's something though I definitely advise, like where in Limon, Costa Rica, where the ship docks, there's absolutely nothing to do. So you want to take an excursion in Costa Rica. I mean, it's actually not that nice looking where we get off the ship. So I don't think there's really anything, like I said, to do. It's not one of those places I'd like walk around, you know, a whole lot or anything. So definitely if you ever go on a ship to that part of Costa Rica, I would take an excursion. And then we had a day at sea, and then we had Ocho Rios, Jamaica, which was our last stop. We had not been there in, I bet, 10 years. We went on one of our first cruises, possibly on a Holland America, and I think we did a snorkeling excursion, but it was a really nasty looking port. I mean, the whole thing looked totally different to us. I think we must have pulled in somewhere else, or they've built a new terminal or something, because none of it looked familiar. It was actually really pretty, which surprised us because we still had memories of it looking really bad. And from years ago when we went, it was like one of those we could care less if we ever went back to Ocho Rios again. It was so dirty and gross. We didn't like it at all. Have all kind of crazy stories from it. But this experience was really nice. So we were glad we went. It was beautiful where you dock. You can easily just walk into some places to shop if you want. We ended up taking an excursion. Every time we go to Jamaica, which normally we're on Royal Caribbean, so we are at Falmouth, which is quite a bit further of a hike, you know, to get to Dunn's River Falls. And since we're Ocho Rios and Dunn's River Falls is just right there, we're like, let us go ahead and take a tour. We knew going into it from just my research that I was like, I'm probably not going to do the falls. To me, hanging on to a bunch of strangers, walking up these big rocks pretty much as tall as I am, it just didn't sound like fun. There was just so many people. I just knew that's probably not something that I care to do, but I'd like to see it. Everybody says it's definitely a must see. Well, the day we went, if you saw that footage, I'm not kidding, I've never seen so many people. It was like Disney World. And everybody's standing around in their swimsuits, which is weird to begin with. It's like, okay, you saw way more skin and way more stuff than you wanted to. But it was really cool seeing it. So we walked down like more than halfway, and I'm telling you, that was no joke walking back up. I mean, it's not as hard as being in the water and on the rocks in the falls, but it is steep even walking back up. I mean, I was out of breath. So there are places you can get off periodically, thankfully, because I would feel bad if somebody, you know, felt they couldn't make it all the way up, because it's steep. You saw in that video footage, some of it, you know, my husband said that was only halfway. And I mean, you could see, I don't know if you can really grasp from the footage how steep it really was. But luckily, again, there are places, or at least halfway, I think you could get off if you know, I say get off, you could walk out if you felt like you didn't want to go the rest of the way. So interesting to see, but way too many people for me. And that was during the week too, which was crazy. And then we also did this little falls kind of, I don't know, it was like a botanical garden, which was really pretty. And there was a great view of like the ship and stuff. We did that before Dunn's River Falls. Because, you know, most of those excursions, it's like 2 or 3 places combined into one. As far as the ship, it had just been in dry dock in January. So we went in March. 2 months prior, it was in dry dock getting renovations. That's one reason why we chose Coral Princess over the other one. It looked like it had some of the features that we actually liked from going on Regal Princess last year, which was like like the International Cafe and a few things they had added to this one. So, you know, all new carpet, a lot of upgrades. It looked really nice for being an older ship. I mean, the whole ship isn't going to be totally redone, but for the most part, you can tell it's been updated. So it was nice. We were really happy with our cabin. Again, I showed that. I always like to show a cabin tour because people are curious about the size and just what things look like in, you know, a cruise ship cabin. So we always get a balcony. We were really happy with the size of the room. It was very nice. Entertainment was good. I do get a lot of questions though. I want to mention there's not as much to do on this ship, and certain itineraries are just going to be that way. There were a few times we were bored, but they had a lot of trivia, which was fun and always really busy. Things like that. We're kind of hit and miss with shows, but they did have some comedy that was great that we went to go see. This is an older clientele on this cruise. There are certain cruises that the clientele will just be older. So be prepared for that. People ask me an age range. I found it to kind of be all ages. You'll see like families of all ages together, but with it being 10-day and with it being the price is, that limits to who goes on this cruise. So there's definitely not a lot of kids. We saw hardly any kids. But the age range is going to be definitely like 50 plus. So, I mean, you're not going to see totally everybody walking around that's like 80, but you're going to see a lot of older people. So that usually has to do with then what activities and stuff they'll have on the ship too. Because just keep in mind, those type of cruises just cater to an older audience. So something I just wanted to mention because I've gotten a lot of questions about that. As far as food, that's always a big topic with cruises anymore. I just find it changing all the time. Princess overall, though, I have to say, has really great food. There's little things that I'm picky about personally just from going on so many cruises that I would like to see. But again, that's just my own personal preference. I would say for dining room food, Princess has excellent service and great dining room food. We did go to Sabatini's, which was great. The service was just so-so, but the food was great. That's a specialty restaurant that they have on most of their ships. I have to say though, this is only my second Princess cruise, but for me, I'm a little disappointed in the buffet selections for breakfast especially. I like a big variety, and my husband's one of those people, he doesn't like traditional breakfast food. He's almost more like European in the way he likes to eat breakfast, like meats, cheeses, you know, fruits, a variety of stuff like that. I felt like they were very limited in the buffet. I've seen better selections in the buffet on other cruise lines. But their desserts are some of the best, you know, top-notch desserts. And again, their food in the dining room is one of the best. So, but overall, I mean, we had a great time. We're definitely really glad we went. You guys have given me some great feedback on the vlog footage. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying it. Again, I know it was a little long, but I really wanted to get the most canal footage that I could. So I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, anything I didn't answer, definitely leave me a comment below or feel free to email me. I always get a lot of emails regarding cruises, and I'll try to help you any way I can. Let me know if you guys are thinking about taking this cruise. Again, I highly recommend it. We're definitely happy that we took this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.